Thomas Reed came back after years in the service, but the house he once called home was nothing but 4 empty walls. The furniture was gone, the family photos stripped off the walls. On the dusty floor, the only thing left was a folded piece of paper, sitting there like somebody wanted him to find it. The neighbor swore they saw a strange car pull up and take off into the night. Thomas picked up the note with a shaky hand. The words were short, cold, enough to lock up his chest. If you want to see them again, come to Cedar Hill, Warehouse 7, 10 p.m., alone. Where were his wife and kid? Who left a message like that? And what the hell was waiting for him in some abandoned warehouse? His old pickup rolled onto the red dirt drive like a tired animal just off the field. He killed the engine. The clock ticked under the dash. The country road was dead quiet. The house stood there dark, cold. Windows shut tight, like a body that wasn't breathing anymore. Thomas drew in a long breath, brushed his hand over the faded welcome sign. It felt like somebody had ripped the insides right out of him. He called soft, "Amanda, kiddo?" The wind pushed dry grass across the porch. No answer, just a hole opening up inside him, wide as a prairie. He pushed the door. The hinge groaned. The hallway was bare, pale squares on the wall where pictures used to hang, dust across the floorboards. On a shelf, only a faint ring left by a water glass, like time froze mid-sip. The air was thick old wood, stale laundry, that smell of a house left behind. Thomas stood still, watching a thin line of daylight cut through the curtain like a dull blade. His heart skipped hard, a clean hit straight to the chest. Who cleared this place out? When? And then, in the middle of the living room, on the old rug, something lay waiting. A folded piece of paper, sharp white against the dust. He dropped to a knee. The rough hands of a soldier shook before touching it. Heavy paper, not some scrap. Folded clean, square. Faint smell of smoke, maybe gas. Thomas glanced around. No creak of a floorboard, no hint of a person. Everything was too neat, too deliberate. He heard his own breathing heavy, uneasy. "Amanda!" His voice rose, bounced, swallowed by the hollow house. Somewhere, the fridge rattled. The kitchen sat dark and deep as a well. A bedroom door cracked open just enough to look like black water. Thomas held the paper tight, still unopened. A cold thought ran up his back. Somebody wanted him to see this first. Thomas? A man's voice carried from the fence. Old Hank, his neighbor, cap pulled low, arms full of mail. Thomas stepped out to the porch, fighting off that restless fire inside. "You see them? Amanda? Little Ava?" Hank shook his head. "Couple days back, white van pulled up, came and went quiet. No waves, no noise. I figured they were moving stuff. I knocked, no one answered. Plate number? Didn't catch it. Eyes ain't what they used to be." He handed over the stack. "Mail's been piling up. Postman says house has been dead a while. Everything all right, son?" Thomas looked down at the top envelope light bill. School letter for Ava. A package returned. He swallowed hard. "Number not all right." Hank stared at the house, lowered his voice. "Heard a car last night. Didn't stop. Just slow it down." "Slowed?" "Like somebody looking in." Hank sighed. "Call me if you need." Then he walked off slow, never turning back. The sun dropped another notch. The house stretched its shadow long as ink. Thomas went back inside. His daughter's bedroom door creaked open. The bed stripped bare, pillow gone, dolls missing. On the wall, paper stars Ava had taped up were peeling halfway, some there, some not. He pulled open her desk drawer, empty. Under the bed, a blue hair tie, dusty. He picked it up, held it tight in his palm. A grain of grit or dried mud fell from the bed frame, tapping the floor so soft it sounded sharp. They left in a hurry, but not the kind of hurry you get in a fire, the kind you plan, down to the minute. At the doorway, he spotted a thin scratch in the wood like metal scraped across. A cold thought cut through him. Why is it all so clean? He unfolded the paper. 3 lines, black ink, steady hand, no name, no smudges. "Want to see them? Cedar Hill Warehouse 7, 22 tonight, alone. No police." Thomas froze. The words hit his ears like a stone dropping. Cedar Hill, the hill of red dirt, the row of old warehouses where the abandoned rail line ran south. Warehouse 7, rotted walls, big steel lock, the back facing nothing but grassland rolling out to the highway. They knew he'd come home today. He looked at the time, 10 o'clock. His watch read 4:30. Just over 7 hours. Not long. Not enough for a fair fight. His phone lit up. Voicemail. He hit play. Ava's voice, young, bright, a little shaky. "Daddy, I put the silver star on the ceiling. When you..." Then the line cut. A thump like the phone hitting wood. Silence. Thomas closed his eyes, gripped the blue hair tie so hard his knuckles went white. He dialed Amanda. The call spun, rang out, died. The operator's voice dropped like a door slamming shut. He tore through the kitchen. Knife drawer, empty. Under the sink, bare, just a ripped box of detergent. Cupboard, 2 chipped plates, 1 broken mug. Another cabinet showed a dust trail, pulled in and out 10 times, like someone had been lifting something out of there. On the counter, a long grey streak, like the drag of a small metal case. Thomas brought his hand up to his nose. Cold steel, faint gas, and that sharp bite of industrial tape. Whoever did this, they weren't sloppy. They worked quiet, disciplined, not some junk thief. Not a moving job. A thought settled deep in his bones. They'd been watching him a long time. A soft knock at the door. Little Maggie from next door stood on the porch, clutching her calico cat. "Mr. Thomas, yesterday some man asked if your house was for sale. He didn't smile. I didn't like him. You see his face? Hat on, glasses. Smelled like a shop floor." The cat squirmed, claws catching her arm. "You hear him say anything?" She shook her head. "I just saw him stand outside Ava's window. He tilted his head, like he was listening." Thomas nodded. "Thank you, kid." He pulled a silver coin from his wallet, set it in her hand. "Don't come near here alone. Tell your mum to lock the doors at night." Maggie nodded, stepping back, eyes stuck on the folded note Thomas still held. "Someone leave that for you?" "Yeah. Don't go alone." Thomas gave her a tired smile. "I don't have much choice." She hugged the cat close and ran off. The sun threw dust across the porch like chalk. Inside, Thomas copied the note onto the back of an old bill, circling the words Cedar Hill and Warehouse 7. Soldier's habit: never trust just one set of orders. He pulled out a small pack, first aid kit, flashlight, gloves, his old folding knife, the gear that had stayed with him through 2 tours. In the cracked mirror, he saw a face lined, eyes dry and worn down, but not empty, never empty. He bent over the note again, flipped it. A faint streak of ash-grey dirt cut across the corner. Not from his yard, his dirt was red. And there, a single blue thread, same color as Ava's hair tie, still clenched in his fist. He sniffed the dirt. Strange smell, salt and grit, like sea air mixed with factory dust. Cedar Hill was inland. That smell didn't belong. Somebody wanted him looking the wrong way. By 6 o'clock, shadows stretched long. Thomas killed the lights, let his eyes adjust. He stood still, listening not to the house, but to the space beyond. A low hum, maybe an engine, then silence. Out the window, nothing but an old road, a swaying power pole, a pair of headlights passing quick. His pulse dropped, then jumped. They said, alone. No cops. They wanted him scared, moving on their clock. He slipped the note into his jacket, locked the door, stepped off the porch. Heading to the truck, he remembered Ava's voicemail, the silver star she said, she'd taped to the ceiling. He ran back inside, flipped the switch, ceiling bare, no star, just a square of fresh tape, sticky, still damp. A drop of it landed cold on his forehead. Somebody had been right there, hours ago. He shut the light. Room fell black. Out on the porch, the night wind opened wide. His watch read 6:22. Thomas slid into the truck, key in the ignition but didn't start it. Both hands on the wheel, eyes forward. On the passenger seat, the blue hair tie sat like a promise. The copied note was clipped to the visor. His breathing came short, steady. He muttered low, like an order. Cedar Hill, Warehouse 7, 10 o'clock. Alone means alone. Headlights cut across the yard, gravel crunching under the tires. As he rolled to the gate, his phone buzzed. A new text from an unknown number. 2 words, hurry up. No name, no punctuation. Right then, the streetlight at the hill flashed twice and went black. The yard fell dark. Thomas's grip on the wheel went bone white. He hit the gas, but in the rear view, just for a flicker, a light sparked inside the living room window. One blink, then gone. A signal. But to who? His watch read 9:45 when the pickup hit the red dirt road. Headlights carved the night, dust lifting like gun smoke. The ridge of Cedar Hill loomed, black against the sky. At the end of the road, Warehouse 7 rotted steel, rusted doors, roof sagging like busted teeth. He killed the engine, sat still, chest pounding. The only sound was the wind through the cracked window. He grabbed the folding knife, stepped out. The door groaned, gravel shifted under his boots. The air stank of gas and rust, smelled too much like war. The warehouse door hung loose. He pushed it open, hinge scraping. Flashlight beam swept broken shelves, crumbling walls, webs like snares. And in the middle, a metal box sat waiting, too neat to be chance. He knelt, snapped the blade open, popped the cheap lock. Inside, a child's watch, blue strap caked in mud. His chest dropped. It was Ava's birthday watch. Beneath it, a family photo torn in half, Amanda and Ava still smiling, his face ripped away. "Son of a bitch," he whispered, voice tight. His finger brushed the frozen second hand stuck at 59. Then the ticking started sharp, fast, mechanical. A timer. Thomas stumbled back. The beam caught red and blue wires tangled in dirt. Breath caught in his throat. No time to count. He ran. Feet slipped, lungs burning. Tick, tick, tick. He dove through the door just as a white flash split the night. The blast tore the steel wide, heat and dust knocking him flat, ears ringing. Fire roared, smoke poured out. He clawed up, chest heaving, blood pounding in his temples. Through the smoke, a loudspeaker cracked alive. A man's voice low, cold, no feeling. One beat late, you lose it all. The echo bounced off metal walls, carried out across the valley. Thomas spun, flashlight cutting through smoke and flame. Nothing but shadows. He shouted hoarse into the dark, "Show yourself, I'm right here." No answer, just static on the speaker. Then, silence. Thomas gasped for air, smoke and burnt metal clawing at his nose. He could feel eyes on the back of his neck, breathing down every step. Out in the haze, a red light blinked once, then died like a signal. His chest jumped out of rhythm. Behind him, an engine coughed to life. He spun, too late. Headlights flashed across the lot, then snapped off. When his vision settled, there was nothing but smoke and silence. He bent down, lifted the half-burnt photo, gripped it so hard his knuckles went white. "I'll bring you home, both of you, no matter what." His voice cracked but held firm. Far off, the loudspeaker came alive again, fainter now. "Run, old soldier, the game's just starting." Thomas clenched his jaw. At the edge of the lot lay a small black card, the number 7 carved in, one corner chipped. He picked it up, squeezed it in his fist. Fear coiled in his chest, but his eyes burned hot. The smoke thinned. Warehouse 7 roared with fire, steel popping like gunfire. In the distance, an engine revved hard and faded into the night. Thomas stood in the dirt, sweat cold down his back. This was only the opening move. His phone lit up. Another text from the same unknown number. "Next time. Faster." The stink of smoke clung to his jacket and hair as he drove to the small-town police station, near midnight. The neon sign flickered, the word "Police" bleeding pale blue onto the sidewalk like a hollow promise. He pushed inside. One night, Clark sat chewing gum, eyes glued to a tiny television. "Warehouse explosion, timer bomb," Thomas rasped, chest still shaking. He dropped the charred photo on the counter. "My wife and daughter are taken. I need everyone you've got." The clerk squinted. "Which warehouse?" "Warehouse 7, Cedar Hill." The man scratched his head. "That place has been empty for years. Maybe kids with fireworks." Thomas slammed his hand on the desk, the crack sharp. "I smelled explosives." I heard a voice on a speaker. "This isn't some prank. My family is gone." The clerk startled, picked up the phone, called it in. Minutes later, a lieutenant waddled out, shirt wrinkled, gut hanging. He looked at the photo, shrugged. We'll send a car in the morning. Tonight we've got no order, no manpower. If you want, file a missing person report, but it'll take 48 hours before we open a case. Thomas felt his insides twist. His voice broke low. In 2 days, they'll be dead. The lieutenant sighed, tapped his pen on the desk. Reed, I know you served. I respect that. But rules are rules. We can't launch an operation over some old warehouse blowing up. Best thing you can do is go home and rest. Thomas clenched his jaw, fists tight. He knew pushing harder wouldn't change a thing. He signed the report, pocketed the photo, and walked out. The cold air bit at him, reminding him he was on his own. He drove down Main Street to the Rusty Nail, a dive with a faded wooden sign. He knew Sheriff Bill Carter would be there, the only man he trusted from the veterans' relief work they once did together. The door swung open, stale smoke and bitter beer rolling out. A tired country tune wheezed from a busted speaker. Bill sat at the far end, cowboy hat low, bourbon glass half empty. Broad shoulders, eyes sharp under the weight of years. "Bill," Thomas said, sliding onto the stool beside him. The sheriff looked up, surprised. "Christ, Thomas. Heard you came home today." He noticed the smoke on Thomas's jacket. "What the hell happened to you?" Thomas laid the scorched photo on the bar. "They're gone. I walked out of a timed bomb at Warehouse 7. Cops are moving slower than molasses." Bill frowned, picked up the photo, studied it. "Amanda and Ava, I know them. Can't be." He set the glass down hard, the clink sharp. "You're telling me there was a bomb?" "There was." Metal box. Ava's watch inside, caked with mud. I opened it. It blew. Then a loudspeaker. Man's voice. He was breathing down my neck the whole time. Bill leaned back, took a long drag of air. His face hardened. "This kind of game, it ain't the first I've heard of it." Thomas stared. "What do you mean?" Bill didn't answer right away. He poured another shot, downed it. "Few years back, people went missing. Men, women, even kids. Only trace left behind, personal items tossed out like bait. Not a single case solved, but I never saw them go straight after a soldier." Thomas's voice dropped. "So what do I do, Bill? I'm out of time." Bill gripped his shoulder firm. "Listen to me. You can't walk into this alone. Whoever's behind it, he's pulling the strings. I'll help you. But we've got to be smart." A thin spark of hope flickered in Thomas's eyes, dimmed quick by worry. His voice tightened. "Who the hell are we up against?" Bill shook his head. "Not sure yet. But I've got a feeling. He's military. The way the trap was set, that voice on the speaker, there's discipline in it." The words chilled Thomas. A shadow of the past crept in men who once wore the same uniform, now monsters hiding in the dark. Outside the bar, an engine idled. Headlights slid across the window, then snapped off. Someone had pulled up. In the far corner, a man had been sitting quiet all along. Ball cap low, black jacket, cigarette glowing red. His eyes fixed on Thomas and Bill. Marcus Kane, ex-mercenary. Shoulders carved with scars, face sharp, smile thin as a blade. He watched Thomas lay the family photo on the bar. His eyes lit like an animal catching blood. He muttered, "Good. You're breaking, Reed." Kane crushed the cigarette, slipped out the back. In the lot, a black SUV waited. He popped the trunk, pulled out a brown envelope. Inside, a small child's shoe, mud-caked, laces frayed. He ran a finger over it, smirked. "Let's see how long you last." Entering, he slid the envelope into the toolbox bed of Thomas's pickup. Every move quick, silent, precise like a field drill. Inside, Thomas gripped Bill's shoulder. "I'm not sitting still. If I've got to walk through hell, I'm dragging them out." Bill nodded slow. "Then we go together. But remember, he wants you angry. Don't play his game." Thomas nodded, but the fire in his eyes burned past the warning. His heart was already pulled into the fight. Out in the lot, Thomas started the truck, sat in silence. Night wind pushed through the crack in the window, carrying dry grass and dust. His chest tightened. Something felt off, but he couldn't name it. In the back, the brown envelope lay waiting like a land mine of memory. As the tires rolled off the lot, headlights brushed the trees. A faint rustle came from behind. Thomas glanced in the mirror. Only darkness. He didn't know that in the trunk sat a child's muddy shoe, ready to drive another blade into his chest. The morning wind cut cold, sharp as a dull blade. Thomas pulled over, popped the trunk. The brown envelope sat there waiting, like a trap. His hand shook when he tore it open. Inside, a child's shoe, mud-caked, laces frayed, fresh scuff on the toe. He didn't need a second look. Ava's, his chest locked, worry turning into a lump of iron in his gut. Eyes dry, heart pounding wild. But under it, heat rose rage. Someone had turned his little girl into bait. He checked the envelope again. One note, scribbled, "Follow the dirt." Ink smeared, but clear enough. Thomas slammed the trunk, spun the wheel north. Gravel spit under the tires as he drove. He knew the kind of mud on that shoe. It matched the junkyard 10 miles past Cedar Hill. A rust field of broken cars, a maze of metal he'd crawled as a kid. By the time he got there, the sun had climbed. Rusted frames towered like giant ribs, air thick with old oil, burnt rubber, and something sharper, iron and blood. He moved slow, folding knife tight in his grip. Ground soft, fresh tire tracks cut deep. Someone had been here. He followed past dead trucks and stacked steel walls. Then he froze. A strip of red cloth caught on jagged metal. He pulled it free, Amanda's scarf, a corner stiff with dried blood, brown and sharp, the stink of iron filling his nose. "No," he muttered, fingers crushing the fabric. His chest hammered, vision dimming. For a second he saw her falling, but he shoved it away. "Number, she's alive. They want me to believe otherwise." He tore through the piles, metal crashing loud, echoing across the yard. Sweat and rust streaked his face. Every piece he lifted, he prayed for a trace, a hair, a ring, anything. Only stains of blood in the dirt, fading out. At last, under an old shipping container, something glinted. A tin box, locked, smeared with a faint handprint. Thomas dragged it out, dust coating his jacket. He sucked in air, snapped the lock. The lid popped, dust cloud rising. Inside, just a black USB, smooth, no label. His heart pounded, hands trembling as he shoved it in his pocket. Overhead, crows screamed from a power pole, their cries tearing through the yard like knives. Thomas drove straight back to the Rusty Nail. Bill Carter was waiting with a mug of coffee steaming on the table. Thomas threw the blood-stained scarf down. Bill froze, his face darkening. "Lord Almighty," Bill muttered. Thomas didn't answer. He pulled out the USB. "We need to see what's on this." Bill took him into the back office, dragged out an old laptop. The machine booted slow, then the USB loaded. A video came up. Grainy footage, shot in a dark room. Amanda tied to a chair, gagged, eyes wide, breath ragged. Ava beside her, hands bound, eyes red from crying. In the background, a man circled. Face hidden, but the voice came clear, cold as steel. "You're just breaking the rules, Reed. I make the rules. You break them. They pay the price." Marcus Kane. Thomas slammed his fist on the table. The laptop shook. "I'll kill him." Bill set a hand on his shoulder. "Steady. That's what he wants. He wants you blind with rage." Thomas shoved him off. "You don't get it. I saw Amanda's blood. I heard Ava crying. I'm out of time." Bill pressed his lips, then nodded. "All right, we'll hunt him. But we need a plan. Without it, all three of you die." Thomas leaned on the table, eyes bloodshot, voice iron hard. "My plan is to drag him out tonight." Outside, through the bar's window, a black SUV rolled by. Inside, Kane exhaled smoke, eyes locked on the bar. He spotted Thomas in the office, slamming the table. A thin smile crept across his face. He whispered, "That's it. Burn hot, Reed. I'll show you what it means to play this game to the end." Thomas stepped out to the porch, catching the sharp scent of smoke on the wind. He scanned the street, nothing but flickering streetlights. His teeth clenched, rage burning hotter than fear. He swore his family wouldn't be pawns in anyone's game. Back at his truck, he grabbed for his coat. A small slip of paper fell from the dash. Bold black letters, "Tomorrow night, Old Stadium, alone. If not, there'll be more blood." The town lay smothered under heavy dark, pressing down on rooftops and empty streets. Thomas leaned against the hood of his truck, arms folded, eyes locked on the note. Each word dug into him like claws. Tomorrow night, old stadium, alone. If not, more blood. Sheriff Bill Carter stepped out of the bar, coat hanging off his shoulder, a cold coffee cup in his hand. He looked at Thomas, eyes tired but lit sharp like high beams in the dark. "You really gonna play by his rules?" Bill asked, voice rough. Thomas stuffed the note in his pocket. "There are no rules, just my daughter. If I don't show, he'll make good on it." Bill nodded slow. "Then we go, but not alone." The old stadium sat outside town, once a Friday night football field, now nothing but rusted steel and rotting bleachers. Weeds swallowed the walkways, light poles leaning, a few bulbs flickering weak. A perfect place for a trap. They came in from the west. Wind cut through the frame, whistling like whispers. Thomas gripped the pistol Bill had handed him, heart steady but pounding. The air smelled of rust and dry weeds, thick and heavy. "Think of it like war again," Bill said low, scanning with binoculars. "You move up. I cover." Thomas nodded. They slipped through a broken fence, crept into the stadium's belly. In the center, a spotlight burned on two wooden chairs. On them, Amanda and Ava. Thomas's chest locked. He rushed forward until the flashlight beam hit them. Not people, dummies. Sacks for heads, wigs for hair, old clothes hanging limp. A sick joke. "No," Thomas growled. He took another step and, crack! A bullet tore past his head, sparking off a steel post. Thomas Dove rolled into the weeds. A loudspeaker roared to life, Marcus Kane's voice booming cold across the field. "You're too easy, Reed. Thought you'd save them. Just scarecrows. You're playing my game." Bill shouted, "East side." "He's on the stands." He drew and fired, shots clanging off rusted metal. Crack! This time the round slammed Bill's shoulder. He staggered, dropped into the grass, blood soaking his shirt. "Bill!" Thomas scrambled, dragged him behind steel. Bill gasped, face pale, teeth clenched. "I'm fine, just the shoulder," he hissed. The speaker cut back in. "I can kill you any second. But where's the fun in ending early? Tomorrow, your little girl stops breathing." "Now." Thomas gritted his teeth, blood rushing hot to his face. "Kane, you coward, show yourself." A dry laugh poured from the loudspeakers, echoing off the empty stands. "No, Reed. I like watching you crawl, blaming yourself. Keep running. Tomorrow we play again." The speakers cut out. Only wind howled and Bill's ragged breathing filled the air. Thomas ripped his shirt, pressed it hard against Bill's shoulder. Blood burned hot through the cloth. "You're not dying. I need you." Bill gave a weak grin, sweat rolling down. "I'm old, but not dead yet. You've got more road ahead than me." Thomas hauled him up, nearly carrying him. No more shots came, but the danger pressed in thick as fog. They stumbled out of the stadium, swallowed by dark. At the truck, Bill slid shaky into the passenger seat. Thomas fired the engine, peeled out. His heart hammered, every beat a hammer strike. "See?" Bill whispered, voice breaking. "He's playing you, like a cat with a mouse." But at least, now we know his name. Kane, a mercenary, vanished after that campaign. I heard he's on the blacklist. Thomas gripped the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. He doesn't just want to fight. He wants me broken, and he knows how. Bill leaned back, gasping, eyes squeezed shut. "Then we flip the table. Stop playing by his rules." Thomas nodded, fire in his stare. "Yeah, I'll write my own rules." The truck tore through the night. In the back, the muddy shoe lay like a warning. Thomas glanced at Bill's shirt soaked in blood, but his hand still clutched the gun tight. The old sheriff had bled for him, but Kane had taken round one. Inside Thomas, rage tightened into steel. No matter what traps Kane laid, he'd walk through them. He'd bring his wife and daughter back or die with them. As they hit the main road, the dashboard radio crackled to life. No one touching it. Kane's voice whispered close, too close. "Sleep tight, Reed. Tomorrow night, the real game begins." Tires screeched on wet asphalt. Thomas shoved the gas. The pickup roared forward like a cornered beast. Beside him, Bill clutched his wound, pale, lips trembling, but eyes still open, stubborn, unblinking. "Hold on," Thomas growled. "We're almost at the hospital." The small town hospital rose out of the dark, a 4-story relic with flickering neon. He braked hard, nearly carrying Bill inside. Glass doors slid open, the sting of antiseptic slapping his face. A young nurse rushed over, eyes wide. "Oh God, he's bleeding out!" Through the shoulder. "Get him to surgery." Thomas barked, his voice more command than plea. They wheeled Bill fast down a blinding white hall. Thomas kept pace, eyes darting. His soldier's gut churned. Too quiet. Night shifts ran light, but this was hollow. Bill gasped, grabbing Thomas's shirt. "Careful, he's everywhere." Thomas gripped his hand tight. "You're not dying. Not tonight." The OR doors swung open. A doctor stepped out, white coat, mask in place. His eyes flicked to Thomas just for a beat. Wrong. Too cold. Too strange. "We'll take it from here," the man said. "Wait outside." Thomas's skin prickled. His hand slid toward the knife in his pocket. "Your name?" The man hesitated then. "Dr. Mason." Bill's eyes went wide. He rasped, "No. Mason retired last year." Before Thomas could move, the doctor snapped a scalpel free and slashed. Thomas pivoted, deflected. The blade tore his arm, blood spilling. He swung hard, fist cracking bone. The man stumbled, pistol clattering from his coat. Thomas kicked it away. They crashed to the tile, fists hammering, blows echoing through the corridor. The nurse screamed, backed into the corner. Thomas slammed him to the wall. The man punched twice into his ribs, pain ripping sharp. Rage surged. Thomas locked his hands around the man's throat, drove his head into the wall. Blood soaked the mask as the man collapsed, limp. Thomas gasped for air, turned. Bill had dragged himself off the gurney, crawling through blood. "They weren't saving me," he hissed. "They came to finish us." Thomas heaved him up, nearly carrying him again. They staggered down the hall just as two more figures appeared at the far end. White coats, batons in hand. "Move," Thomas barked. He dragged Bill, boots pounding the floor. Fluorescent lights flickered, the hallway stretching forever. One man charged, baton swinging. Thomas lowered his shoulder, held Bill with one arm, and drove his fist into the man's gut. The guy folded. Thomas snapped his knife open, slashed his arm, the baton clattering. He kneed him hard in the face, out cold. The second came fast, club cracking across Thomas's shoulder. Pain lit white, but he gritted through it, spun, and slammed the man full into a glass door. The pane shattered, and the scream vanished into the night wind. Silence fell, only ragged breath and hurried steps. Thomas pulled Bill out back to the lot. Cold air slapped his face. He got Bill into the seat when his phone buzzed. No number, just unknown caller. He hesitated, answered. The voice poured in, low and familiar. "If you want them alive, decode the paper in the tin box." Thomas gripped the phone. "Kane, coward, you hurt them. What the hell do you want?" That metallic laugh. "I want to watch you break. The paper isn't a joke. Read it, solve it, or your wife and kid go silent for good. I'll find you. I'll end this sick game. Try read. But remember, your daughter's watch froze at 11:59. 1 second, and they're gone." The line clicked dead. Just a long tone left. Thomas slumped against the wheel, sweat soaking his face, heart racing wild. Beside him, Bill groaned, blood all over, but still awake, his hand gripping Thomas's arm. "Listen, he's pulling strings, but we've still got a road. What paper's he talking about?" Thomas pulled the dusty tin from his jacket. Inside, a crumpled sheet covered in numbers and marks. He dismissed it earlier, thinking it just a threat. Not now. "Military code," Thomas muttered, eyes locked. "He wants me playing by memory, by the past," Bill wheezed, nodded. "Then you dig it all back up. This isn't just saving them anymore. It's surviving a man who knows you too well." Thomas snapped the tin shut, shoved it away. His eyes burned, cold and set. "Fine, he wants me in his rules. I'll break his code, then shove it down his throat." The truck pulled away from the hospital, swallowed by night. In the mirror, the white building shrank, its blinking lights like a ghost stare. Thomas clenched the wheel, anger twisting into steel. Nothing, not Kane, not anyone would keep him from bringing his family back. In his jacket, the tin box rattled, as if something moved inside. He pulled it out, flipped the lid. On the crumpled sheet, fresh red ink bled across the paper. "Countdown begins." The cab was dark, lit only by the small overhead lamp. The page shook in his hands with each bump in the road. Below the warning, strings of numbers sprawled. 1423, 11 divided by 07, 19 divided by 03, 18, 05, divided by 04, 15, 03, 11. Bill sat slumped in the passenger seat, shoulder wrapped in bandages, sweat shining on his temple. He forced his eyes open. "See anything?" Thomas dragged air deep, memories from service snapping back like sparks in the dark. Substitution drills, a 1Z26, NATO phonetics. Habits of hiding words in numbers. He scrawled across a receipt. 14, 23, 11, N, W, K, no, Wrong split. He shifted the pattern. 0719. GS 0318. 05. CRE 0415. 0311. DOCK. Letters cut sharp across the page. GS divided by CRE divided by DOC. Thomas frowned. Not right. Needs inversion. He flipped the sequence, applied the old column shift drill. His soldier's eye fit the pieces together. G? Northgate? No. Cree? Maybe Creek? Doc. A map point. Bill rasped. North side's got Grayson Creek. There's an old dock there. Locals call it Dock 1-2. Thomas sat up, seat groaning. His watch ticked past 1. He hit the ignition. Grayson, Dock 12. The truck barreled through the night. Salt air pushed in the window, heavy with seaweed and oil. On the horizon, broken cranes stuck out like steel ribs. The closer to shore, the thicker the fog, waves pounding slow like a drum. Thomas killed the headlights 100 yards out from the port fence. You stay in the truck, he said flat. Lock the doors. If headlights close in, hit the horn 3 times. Bill nodded, slid the pistol back to him. Don't play the hero. Bring them home. Thomas slipped through a tear in the fence. The air hit hard salt, rust, the bite of frozen steel containers. The alleys between them narrowed like trenches, dark and heavy. Somewhere, a chain tapped steady against a pole, each metallic clink like the breath of a ticking clock. Thomas moved low, pistol up at his chest, flashlight pinched between 2 fingers. The beam swept shallow, careful not to give him away. Rusted paint on the containers flashed by H12, keep out, welcome. At the 3rd turn he stopped. Cold air rolled out like an open freezer. A white container sat alone, words scrawled in chalk across the doors. Welcome home, crooked and smeared. Frost clung thick to the seals. Above, a tiny red light blinked. My wife and kid are in there, Thomas muttered. The words hit the concrete, like lead. The lock was electronic, 4 digits on a taped keypad. Beneath the steel handle, a small inspection window. Thomas pressed his hand against it, cold bit through his skin. He wiped hard, fog clearing just enough to see Amanda, strapped to a chair, hair taped down, mouth gagged, chest heaving. Ava huddled on the floor, eyes wide, breath turning white in the freezing air, her small hands bound. On the steel wall, a red LED clock glowed, 30 to 2, 30 to 1. Thomas's throat closed. He tapped twice on the glass. Amanda! Her eyes shot wide, tears streaming. Ava's gaze lit up for a heartbeat, then shrank back against the cold. Speakers cracked to life, Kane's voice pouring out, low and merciless. Right on time, Reed. Tonight's test. Oxygen. When that clock hits 0, they'll sleep like angels. Try anything except call the cops. Thomas slammed his fists on the door, bone rattling. Open it. Open it now. A dry laugh. The code. Reed. You solved Doc. Clever. But what about the numbers beside it? Thomas scanned fast. Chalk near the hinge. H12. On the ground, a half print of a child's shoe led to the door, then vanished. He swept his light across the frame, faint dots, more scratched into paint. He counted. Useless split raw. Memory cut through cycle inversion. Groups of 3. He punched the keypad. 1, 2, 1, 2. Beep. Yellow light blinked wrong. Inside, the clock jumped faster. 29 to 20. 29 to 19. Like a laugh. Kane's voice rolled, smug. 1 beat late. Try again. Thomas's jaw clenched, eyes locked on the red digits. He yanked his knife, jammed it in the seam, prying hard. Sparks bit, but the frozen seal held like bone. He shoved deeper, poured strength into it. Nothing. He drew his pistol, aimed at the lock. He froze. 1 shot could fry the circuits, lock it down for good. Inside, Amanda shook her head hard, eyes pleading, "Don't shoot." "All right," Thomas muttered, mind running hot. "You want a code? I'll crack your damn code." He dropped low, swept his light under the container. On the rear axle, a strip of black tape peeled back, edge of a card tucked inside. He pulled it free. Embossed numbers, N 43 degrees, W 110 degrees, half coordinates, the rest torn away. The speaker hissed alive. "Half a clue, old soldier. Tick faster, they're getting cold." Inside, Ava coughed hard, the gag muffling it, turning it to a choke. Amanda strained against the chair, eyes locked on him like pins. Heat surged in Thomas, not from the night, but from the fire ripping his chest. He backed off a step, light up to the roof. Vent seals patched with fresh tin, screws still bright, done hours ago. Kane had stood right here, precise, disciplined. "Bill, copy?" Thomas pressed the small PTT mic at his collar, cheap travel radio he always kept stashed. Static, then Bill's voice, faint but steady. "Copy. Where are you?" "Dock 12. Reefer container. Amanda and Ava inside. Oxygen on a timer. Don't bring headlights near sniper glass, could be up. You break it? Not yet. Need the code. Could tie to H12. Morse on the hinge. I'll try inversion. Thomas lifted his gaze, caught the faint dots again, flipped them horizontal, read right to left. He scratched the sequence with chalky finger across the beam. 1, 9, 8, 7. He punched it in. Beep. Yellow blinked green half a second. Then blood red. Wrong. Timer jumped. 27 to 58. 27 to 57. Kane's voice rasped, laughing. Close. But close still means dead. Thomas slammed his palm to steel, the echo gut deep. He pressed his forehead to the freezing door, whispered low so only they could read his lips. I'm here. He tapped his chest twice. I'm here. Amanda shut her eyes once, drew breath, opened them again. Her stare burned with the kind of courage only a woman on the edge carries. Ava shook, but when she saw her father's hand on the steel, she pressed her bound wrists to the wall too, as if touching him through the metal. Thomas stepped back, his mind snapped calm. Kane wanted panic, wanted him to fire, wanted mistakes. He'd do the opposite, collect every scrap. Light swept again, hinge, ground, seams, a faint streak of white paint under the step, 6 inches long, split into 3 even breaks. Beside it, 3 red pin marks, dots aligned in a triangle pointing up. Triangle, delta, letter, D. Thomas studied the keypad. 4 buttons were worn smooth, 0, 1, 2, 7. Odds said 1 in 1,000, but Kane wasn't the type to throw numbers blind. He always left a mark. H12. Delta. Nolla. Yksi kaksi seitsemän. Thomas pressed Vienas tunuli septini. Beep. Green lit steady 1 long second, then died. Lock stayed tight. Inside, the compressor groaned, timer dropping faster. 26 to 22. 26 to 21. Like someone stomping the gas. The speaker snapped alive, cold as a grave. Smarter than most, Reed? Good. Smart enough to see, not smart enough to save. Next round. A thin red laser line flicked across the yard, then gone. Thomas whipped his head up. Nothing on the container roofs, just fog swallowing the dark. He ground his teeth, leaned into the inspection window. Listen, he mouthed to Amanda, sharp, slow. Don't pass out. Breathe slow. Hold Ava close. I'll be back. She nodded hard, eyes wet but burning. She pulled the girl against her chest, giving what little warmth she had left. Their breath smeared white across the steel. Thomas pushed back, running hard, knife biting into his palm from the grip. At the far corner, another chalk mark caught his light, H9, scrawled faint in rust. The next clue, waiting like a slap. He dove through the fence, slid into the truck. Bill lifted his head, voice broken. Well, they're inside. Clock's running. I need tools, cut power, pry the lock, something. Who you gonna call? No one, Thomas said, eyes burning coals. He wants us cut off. I'll circle to the back of the docks, hit the main power. If the lock drops, door'll give. You stay on comms. 3 horn blasts, you ram it. Bill swallowed, pale. This shoulder, but I'll try. Itsing, Thomas yanked the brake, shoved the door open. Salt wind slapped his face. Back at the container, the keypad light blinked steady, each flash a blade to the gut. Inside the freezer, the LED bled down. 25 to 0, 24 to 59. Ava's cough choked behind the gag. Amanda's muffled moan pressed the air thin. Up above, a shadow slipped across the container roof and vanished, leaving only 3 words over the speaker, sharp as a razor. Hurry up, Reed. The red numbers cut down like knives. 1958, 1957. Air thinning, Amanda's breath misting white, Ava slumping harder into her chest fluttering wild. Thomas slammed his fist against the panel again. Nothing. Damn it. His mind raced like an engine running hot. 4-tier electronic lock, no knife, no gun would force it. Only one way left. The master key. Headlights flashed at the far end of the yard. Footsteps splashed. 3 men in dark gear closed in, rifles low in their hands, Kane's crew. Thomas gripped his pistol, eyes bloodshot. His heart roared. If he wanted the key, he had to take it from them. Step out, Reed. A voice boomed from a belt radio on one of them. Pull that trigger, and they die faster. The key's here. You want it. Fight for it. Thomas leaned out, aimed, fired. Crack. The lead man dropped. The other 2 dove for cover, rounds sparking off steel. He rolled, pressed tight against the container, firing back. Crack, crack! A scream split the rain. 1 man fell, a ring of keys clattering across wet concrete. The last rushed with a blade flashing. Thomas blocked with his arm, pain ripping as blood spilled. Fury fueled him. He slammed his shoulder in, crushed the man against the wall. They grappled. Thomas wrenched the wrist till bone popped, knife clattering free. A knee to the gut, a fist across the jaw, the man crumpled, blood mixing with rain. Heart pounding, Thomas lunged for the keys. His hand shook, eyes sharp. One after another red light, wrong. Amanda pounded the steel inside. Ava wheezed, head sagging. Timer, 10:40, 2, 10:41. No, hold on, breathe slow. Amanda, slow for her. Thomas shouted through the steel. He shoved in the 3rd key. Click, green light flashed. The lock hissed, released. Thomas ripped the door wide. Freezing fog blasted out, cutting his lungs like needles. He rushed in, sliced ropes, tore the tape. Amanda collapsed into his arms, tears spilling. Ava slumped, breath shallow. "Daddy's here, Daddy's here." Thomas pulled her tight, pressed her face into his chest, felt the weak rise of her breath. "No one takes you from me." He dragged them out into the rain, the cold slamming against bare skin, fire raging in his chest. Behind him, the timer beeped on, useless now. He laid Amanda and Ava into the truck's cab, wrapped his coat around them, hand trembling as he stroked his daughter's hair. Ava's eyes fluttered open for a moment, whispering, "Daddy," before fading into sleep. Thomas turned back, eyes burning red, every muscle strung tight. Kane. Rain came down in sheets, the yard lit by flashes of lightning. From the distance, an engine-roared truck barreling in, headlights blazing, horn howling like a predator closing in. The port drowned under silver rain. Thomas sprinted between containers, heart pounding, gun in hand, coat soaked through. In his head, the oxygen clock kept flashing, red digits stabbing at him like a blade. The truck's roar grew louder. A beam of light swept the rows. Thomas glanced back, saw the rig charging, water exploding under its wheels. The light stretched his shadow long and shaking across wet concrete. "Christ," he hissed, diving to the side. But the truck swerved, tires screaming, boxing him against the steel wall. Metal shrieked, sparks flying. He rolled just in time as the cab smashed the container. The ground shook, rain scattering like needles. The door banged open. Marcus Kane stepped out. Broad shoulders, black coat plastered to his scarred frame, hair slicked, eyes sharp as a blade. In his fist, a combat knife glinted under the storm. "Welcome to the final round, Reed," he said, voice calm, like small talk in a diner instead of a killing ground. "You're quicker than I figured, but not quick enough to win." Thomas raised his pistol, finger trembling on the trigger. "Let them go, Kane. Tonight ends it." Kane laughed, hollow and rough. "Hero? You're just a worn-out pawn. I want you to feel what I felt left behind, doubted and gone." Before Thomas could answer, he fired. Crack! The bullet tore the rain, but Kane rolled, his big frame moving ghost slick. He came low, knife slashing. Thomas blocked with the pistol grip, steel striking steel, sparks spitting. They tore at each other in the storm. Fists, steel, grunts, tangled with thunder. A punch crushed into Thomas's ribs, breath ripped from him. He answered with a hook to Kane's jaw, blood and rain mixing into a red stream down his neck. "You're weak, Reed," Kane snarled, shoving him into the wall. The knife pressed down, the edge trembling a hair from Thomas's throat. Mercenary strength bore down like an anvil, shaking his arms. In Thomas's head, Amanda's eyes, Ava's tears, the red clock flashing, fury surged. He roared, heaved Kane back half a step, but Kane didn't stall. He twisted the blade, booted Thomas's knee. Thomas buckled, fell, gun skittering away. Kane grabbed his hair, yanked his head up. Cold steel kissed his throat, skin splitting, blood sliding into the rain. "At last," Kane whispered, his breath thick with smoke and blood. "You'll die like they did quiet, in a cold hole. Nobody will remember your name." Thomas locked his neck, eyes burning red. "You'll never touch them, I swear it." Well, the blade pressed deeper, lightning flashing across Kane's twisted grin. Then crack! A gunshot tore through the storm. The round chewed concrete inches from Kane's boot. Sheriff Bill Carter stood 10 yards out, arm shaking but pistol raised, shoulder still bandaged, voice rough but steady. "Drop it, Kane, now." Rain slowed to a hard drip, hitting steel roofs and puddles. The yard stank of gunpowder and rust. Thomas knelt in the wet, one hand pinning Kane's shoulder to the concrete, the other jamming a gun against his skull. Blood from Kane's side ran dark in the water. Kane wheezed, chest rattling, but his eyes still burned dark. Thomas leaned in, voice grinding. "Enough. What do you want? Why my family?" Kane coughed a laugh, wet with blood. "Your family. Just pawns. I wanted you." Thomas shoved harder. "Say it plain." Kane dragged breath, choking on iron. "You think you're the only one? Number? Dozens like you. Vets, men we bled beside, erased from the record, gone. No papers, no files, no names. You're just another on the list." Thomas's chest tightened, rain cold on his skin, but his bones burned hot. "You're lying." Kane's eyes dimmed, but his voice stayed firm. "Truck, back cabin, files, you'll see. Men you knew, friends, on that list." Thomas staggered. A face flickered in memory, brother in arms, thought dead in the desert. His hand trembled, but he didn't pull the trigger. Instead, he rolled Kane over, wrenched the knife away, bound him tight with rope left in the yard. "We're not done, Kane. If one word of this is true, I'll find it." Kane gave a ragged laugh, eyes half shut. "You won't survive it, Reed. This shadow's bigger than you think." Thomas rose, chest heaving, rain slowed, waves pounding faint beyond. His hand shook, but his stare was iron. Thomas turned to the truck Kane had driven in. The cab door was smeared with blood, the handle cold as ice. He drew a deep breath and pulled it open. Darkness inside. The smell of rust and old paper mixed thick. On the passenger seat sat a black metal case, simple lock. He yanked hard, lid clanging open. Inside files, thick binders, lined up neat, covers stamped classified. On every spine handwritten, MIA, cleared. Thomas's heart slammed against his skull. He pulled one out, rain and blood soaking the pages. Inside, lists of names, birth dates, units, status. Each one marked, missing, then stamped in red, processed. He flipped fast. Every name familiar men he drank with in tents, split rations with in the desert, carried bleeding in his arms. Gone, wiped clean from the record. A page slipped loose. Thomas bent, lifted it. Words cut like steel. Staff Sergeant Daniel Rourke, Kia, cleared. Daniel Rourke, his closest friend. Dead. He'd believed in that blast years ago. He remembered the shrapnel in Rourke's gut, remembered him screaming for Thomas to run. Yet here his name sat on a list not fallen, but erased. Thomas's throat locked tight. His hand shook over the page. Relief because the doubt over his friend's death was finally answered. But grief twisted deep, crushing his chest. Rourke hadn't just died. He'd been taken. And the question stabbed hard. Was Rourke alive somewhere or buried in this rotten game? Amanda came close, soaked coat clinging, Ava in her arms, her eyes blurred with tears. "Thomas, what is it?" He turned, eyes bloodshot, no words at first. He held out the dripping file. She glanced, then clutched Ava tighter, trembling. "It's not just us, Amanda. Him and whoever he works for, they've been taking others. My brothers, other families. We're just one piece of something bigger." Amanda wept, but steadied her voice for the child against her chest. "Then what do you do, Thomas? You can't fight this, not alone." His fists tightened, knuckles white. He stared out over the port, containers stacked like tombs in the mist. "I don't have a choice. If we live through this, I dig it up. Every name. I give them back their place." Bill showed up, shirt soaked with blood, face pale but eyes bright. He looked over the files, furrowed his brow, then gave a slow nod. "I believe you, and if you need me, I'll stand with you." Thomas lifted his head. Dawn cracked faint, light slipping through heavy clouds. His voice was low but solid. "Tonight we won a round, but the war, it's just starting." Kane lay sprawled in the wet, blood running with rain, a weak grin on his face as if he knew Thomas had opened a door bigger than revenge. Thomas gripped the soaked folder, eyes shut for a beat, letting the tremor shake out of him. Relief that his family was alive, crushed under a new weight of duty. The truck sat quiet, cabin dark, files scattered like broken souls, and in the yard of steel and puddles, the soldier stood straight, fire in his eyes hotter than ever. By morning, yellow light filtered through hospital windows. Smell of disinfectant and stale coffee hung in the empty hall. Thomas sat in a hard chair, coat still reeking of salt and gunpowder. Behind the glass, Amanda slept thin-faced, arm over Ava, both wrapped in a blanket, their breath steady but worn, like they'd walked through hell. Thomas sighed, closed his eyes for a moment. Pressure in his chest eased just enough to breathe. They were alive. That alone pulled him back from the edge. But the comfort carried weight responsibility heavier than before. The hall door slammed open. Nurses rushed a gurney past. Sheriff Bill Carter on it, pale, shoulder bleeding through fresh bandages. Monitor beeped slow. A young doctor snapped orders. "ICU, now." Thomas shot up. "How is he?" The doctor's brow knotted. "Bullet tore a branch artery. He's lost a lot of blood. We've got him under to stabilize. Pray he makes it through the night." Thomas's fists clenched, chest stone heavy. Bill had dragged him back from death's edge, and now he lay like a shadow. Thomas wanted to stay, but duty gave him no choice. In his pocket, the file from Kane's truck weighed like lead. At a small desk in the waiting room, he pulled it out. Pages damp, edges blurred, but legible. He turned sheet after sheet. Names, units, marked, MIA, cleared. Each stamped in red with a strange emblem. A circle enclosing a black arrow, a mark he'd never seen in any official record. Thomas clenched his teeth. "You were just a pawn, Kane." He heard again what Kane had gasped through blood. "Dozens like you, erased." Faces came back, men who shared trenches, men who sat around desert fires. All these years he thought they were dead. Turns out, they'd been pulled into the grip of something darker. Amanda stirred, voice rough. "You're still awake?" Thomas turned. She sat up, brushing Ava's hair as the child slept. Her tired red eyes fell on the file stack. "What is that?" He was quiet a long time. Then he laid a page on the bed. The name printed bold made Amanda jolt. "Daniel Rourke." "Rourke," she whispered. "The one who died with your unit." Thomas nodded, eyes blurred. "He didn't die the way we thought. Not bomb, not bullets. They erased him, and others too." Amanda held her chest, breath catching. "Dear God. Then what happened to us was just the beginning." Thomas gripped her hand, cold in his palm. "Yes, Kane was only the opener. There's a bigger hand behind him, a network. If we don't act, more families will fall into this black hole." Amanda stayed quiet, tears sliding, but she nodded. "Whatever you have to do, we'll be here. We believe in you." Her words tightened in Thomas's chest. Anger turned into a heavier fire responsibility burning hard in the dark. He turned more pages. The last was thicker, tucked in the back. He pulled it out, froze. A map of the United States, spread wide. Red dots scattered across states. Texas, Wyoming, Virginia, Michigan, even Alaska. Each dot marked with a code. 2 amperes, 4C, 1B. Strange symbols, but Thomas understood classification tags. Each one, a person erased. His hands shook as he set the map down. His heart pounded, head spinning like a storm. This wasn't just personal revenge, this was a system, a hunting network. Amanda leaned over, staring at the map. "How many more?" Thomas breathed hard, voice cracked but firm. Too many. And now, it's not just our lives, it's theirs too. Outside the window, dawn came slow. Light washed the hills gold, start of a new day. But to Thomas, it wasn't peace. It was a reminder. His fight wasn't done. On the table, the map with red dots glowed in the morning sun, like blood not yet dry, like voices of forgotten soldiers begging to be freed. The old pickup rumbled down the dirt road. Tires chewed gravel, each crunch tapping memory. Ahead, the wooden house rose, the place left empty, the start of nightmares. Now it stood quiet, windows dark. But this time Thomas Reed didn't walk in with fear. He walked in with a heavy heart and a fire in his eyes. Amanda rode shotgun, Ava in her arms, both thinner, worn from captivity, but their breathing was steadier now. Ava blinked awake, saw through the glass. "Daddy, our house." Thomas nodded, lips tight. "Yeah, sweetheart, our house." He stopped at the porch, stepped out. Damp night still clung to the air, but sunlight fell across weathered wood. He opened the door. Hinges groaned, like a long sigh. Inside, the place was still bare. Dust across the floor, faded squares where pictures used to hang. But today, it wasn't a grave anymore. He dropped his pack, lit the lamp. Warm glow pushed the dark back. Amanda set Ava on a chair, smiled faint. "At least, we've got a roof." Thomas nodded, peeled off his wet coat, rolled up sleeves. From the garage he pulled an old toolbox. A hammer, planks, a dried can of paint. He started patching boards, closing cracks. Each hammer strike thudded like a heartbeat, the house coming alive again. Amanda watched, eyes soft. Ava whispered, "Daddy's making my house new again." Thomas paused, let a smile flicker. "That's right, honey, your house. We'll light it up again." By evening, the porch lamp glowed for the first time in months. Yellow light spread inside, pushing back the cold. Amanda set out a simple meal, bread, canned soup, a few boiled greens. Ava giggled when Thomas sat down, serving her a bite. Spoons clinked on bowls, ordinary sounds they thought they'd lost forever. Thomas ate slow, eyes on the two of them. Warmth filled his chest, quieting the storm. Relief, a weight, lifting. For one long breath, he let himself feel it. Family. Still here, still breathing. Beside him on the chair, the thick file still lay heavy. The cover soaked, pages wrinkled, but the red stamp MIA, cleared, stood out. Names and faces he once called brothers, stared back in silence, like ghosts waiting to be called home. Thomas set his spoon down, hand clamped on the file. Amanda watched him. Didn't need words. "You can't stop yet, can you?" He nodded slow. "Number we lived. But out there too many didn't. Kane was just one piece. The network's still out there. If I keep quiet, more vanish." Ava's eyes lifted, wide and tired. "Daddy, you're gonna save them?" Thomas swallowed, touched her hair. "Yeah, honey. One day I'll have to go, but I promise I'll always come back." Ava smiled weak, drifted into her mother's shoulder. Amanda brushed her hair, eyes locked on Thomas, fear and faith mixed. "We'll wait for you. Just don't lose yourself." Thomas said nothing, just sat there, listening to the wind in the eaves, mixing with the warmth of supper. Night fell. The house glowed now, no longer a tomb. Amanda and Ava slept under fresh sheets. Thomas stood on the porch, eyes on the sea. Waves hit steady, moonlight spilling silver like a shroud. In his arms, the file weighed heavier than any rifle he'd carried. He opened the map, red dots scattered across the country. Each one a life, a family, a soldier waiting. He pressed the file to his chest. Wind tore at his coat, whispering warning. The real war wasn't done. Behind him, the house shone warm, dishes still steaming on the table. A simple meal, family close, the clink of spoons still echoing. But outside, the wind howled, reminding the soldier his road was long, and this fight had already grown beyond him. The house smelled faintly of fresh paint and damp wood. Thomas stood at the kitchen window, sleeves rolled up, arms flecked with dust and old plaster. The hammer he had been using hung loosely in his hand. Behind him, Amanda set down 2 steaming mugs of coffee on the table, her movements careful, as if she were still learning how to live in silence again. Ava, wrapped in a wool blanket, sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing with a handful of colored pencils she had found in an old box. The sound of pencils scratching against paper was steady, almost musical. It was a sound Thomas hadn't heard in months, and it hit him harder than gunfire. He turned away from the window, let the hammer fall onto the counter, and leaned back into the warmth of the room. For the first time in too long, they were all under one roof, alive, breathing, together. But the file folder sat on the table, its pages drying in the glow of a weak lamp. Names, places, men who had been erased like smudges on a page. Every time Thomas's eyes drifted toward it, the room felt heavier. Amanda noticed. "You're not here." "Not really," she said softly. "Even with us sitting right in front of you." Thomas rubbed his face, exhaled through his nose. "I'm here, I'm just not done yet." She crossed the room, touched his shoulder. "No soldier ever feels done. But you've got a family that needs you now. We can't lose you to a war that's hiding in shadows." Thomas nodded, but the truth burned behind his eyes. "They're not just names in that file, Amanda. They were men who fought beside me, men who saved my life. And if someone's still out there, waiting for help, I can't pretend not to know." Silence filled the space, the kind of silence that only exists when love collides with duty. Later that night, after Amanda and Ava had fallen asleep, Thomas stepped onto the porch. The ocean roared beyond the cliffs, steady and unforgiving. He lit a cigarette, a habit he thought he'd kicked years ago, and let the smoke curl into the salt air. The file sat under his arm, thick and accusing. He flipped it open with his thumb. A map of the US spread across the inside flap, marked with red pins and handwritten codes. Wyoming, Michigan, Virginia. Places far from here, but tied together by the same quiet violence that had almost swallowed his family. One name caught his eye again. Daniel Rourke. He whispered it into the night. "Danny, you were supposed to be gone." The cigarette burned down to ash, but Thomas didn't flick it away. He just stood there staring at the horizon. The sea stretched endless, black and silver under the moon, like a road with no end. The next morning, the house smelled of bacon and coffee. Ava sat at the table, hair still tangled from sleep, laughing softly as Amanda fussed over her plate. For a moment, Thomas let himself sink into the ordinary coffee warming his palms, sunlight slipping across the floorboards, his daughter humming between bites. "Daddy," Ava said suddenly, looking up, "are we safe now?" The question hit like a shell burst in the middle of breakfast. Amanda froze, spatula in hand. Thomas set down his mug slowly. He bent close, brushed a strand of hair from Ava's cheek. "You're safe, baby. As long as I'm breathing, you're safe." Ava nodded, satisfied with an answer she could hold on to. She went back to eating, humming again. Amanda's eyes met his over the table. She didn't need to say anything. He could see the plea in them. Let that be enough. That evening, Thomas carried a box of tools back to the garage. The place smelled of oil and rust, familiar as the barracks had once been. He opened a drawer, slipped the file inside, and shut it hard. His hand lingered on the handle. He wanted to leave it there, bury it under old wrenches and dust. He wanted to choose dinner tables and porch lights over battlefields in the dark. But as he stood there, he could almost hear Kane's voice echoing in his skull. "This is bigger than you think, Reed." Thomas clenched his fists, closed his eyes. The weight in his chest was more than grief, more than anger. It was duty, the kind that doesn't vanish with retirement papers or a folded flag. Night settled again. The house glowed with soft yellow light, laughter faint from the living room. Thomas stepped outside, boots crunching the gravel path. He looked back once through the window. Amanda was leaning against the couch, Ava asleep across her lap, a picture of peace he had almost lost. He turned to the horizon. The sea wind carried salt and whispers. The file under his arm pressed heavy against his ribs. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. Thomas Reed had come home, yes. But somewhere across the country, in towns marked by red pins on a map, other families were still waiting in the dark. And a soldier doesn't stop fighting not when there are lives left to save. The porch light hummed faintly against the darkness, its glow spilling onto the gravel drive. Thomas sat on the top step, elbows on his knees, a half-empty mug of coffee cooling in his hands. The file folder lay beside him, edges curled, pages swollen from the salt air. Behind him, the house breathed with the quiet sounds of sleep, Amanda's soft shifting, Ava's steady breaths drifting down the hall. For the first time in months, the night wasn't filled with sirens in his head. No alarms, no distant gunfire, no ticking clocks, just the steady pulse of the ocean rolling against the cliffs. He should have felt peace. But peace, he realized, was something borrowed, never his to keep. He picked up the folder, flipped it open in the dim light. The map stared back at him, dots scattered across the country like drops of blood on a pale canvas. Each mark had a name, a life, a family. He traced one with his finger, Wyoming, then another, Virginia. When his finger landed on the name Daniel Rourke again, his throat tightened. Danny. The man who had once dragged him out of a burning Humvee, laughing through the smoke. The man who had said, "If one of us goes home, it's enough." And here his name was, not in a memorial, not in a folded flag, but in a ledger of the disappeared. Thomas whispered into the night, "I owe you more than this." The wind answered with a cold gust, snapping the edges of the pages. The screen door creaked. Amanda stepped out, pulling her sweater tighter around her shoulders. She leaned against the post, studying him. "You're not sleeping again." Thomas gave a faint smile. Never was much good at that. She walked closer, sat beside him. Her hand found his, warm and steady. "You've brought us home. Isn't that enough?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the file. "It should be." Amanda followed his gaze, then back to him. "But it's not." "Apio." Thomas let out a long breath. "They used us, Amanda. Not just me, not just Kane. All of us. Men who gave everything, written off like they never existed. And now their families. They're out there wondering why nobody's coming back. Somebody has to stand up." Her eyes shimmered in the porch light. "And you think it has to be you?" He turned to her, voice low but firm. "It's always been me, you know that." Amanda looked down at their intertwined hands. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the ocean's roar. Finally, she squeezed his hand. "Then promise me one thing. Don't lose yourself the way Kane did. Don't let revenge eat you alive." Thomas nodded, swallowing hard. "I'll try." It was the closest he could get to a promise. Morning came grey and heavy, clouds sitting low over the coast. Thomas fixed the squeaky back door, hammered a loose step on the porch, and tightened the latch on the gate. Little things. Things a man does to remind himself he's still part of a home. At breakfast, Ava grinned as she showed him a picture she'd drawn, 3 stick figures standing in front of their house, a sun overhead, a flag waving beside it. Thomas studied it, throat thick. "That's pretty good," he managed. "But you forgot one thing." Ava tilted her head. "What?" He picked up a crayon and drew a small dog beside the family. She giggled, clapping. "We don't have a dog, Daddy." "Maybe one day," Thomas said, folding the paper gently. Amanda smiled from across the table, but her eyes lingered on him. She knew the picture was more than just a child's drawing. It was a blueprint of the life they could have if he chose to stay. That afternoon, Thomas walked down to the garage, the smell of oil and old wood wrapped around him. On the workbench, the file folder sat where he'd left it, waiting. He opened it again, staring at the names. Each one felt heavier than the hammer he'd held that morning. He slid the map out, spread it across the bench. The red dots stared back. He reached for a pen and circled 3. Wyoming, Michigan, Virginia. He didn't know why those 3. Maybe instinct, maybe fate. As he capped the pen, his phone buzzed. a number he didn't recognize. He stared at it a long moment before answering. A voice, low and strained, came through. "Reed, if you've got the file, you're not done. They'll come for you. For all of us." Thomas gripped the phone tighter. "Who is this?" The line crackled. Then, "A friend. One of the names you've got. Don't trust anyone. Not the army, not the cops. Find the rest before they do." The call ended. Static hummed in his ear. He lowered the phone slowly, staring at the map. His jaw set. That night, dinner was quiet. Amanda ladled stew into bowls. Ava chattered about her drawing, but Thomas barely tasted the food. His mind kept drifting back to the voice, to the map. After Ava went to bed, Amanda joined him on the porch again. "You got a call," she said simply. He nodded. "And you're going to leave?" Thomas's eyes lifted to the horizon, dark and endless. "Not yet, but soon." Amanda leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then let's make the time we have count." "Oh." He wrapped an arm around her, pulled her close. The weight of the file still pressed on his lap, a constant reminder, but for a moment, he let himself breathe in the scent of her hair, hear the hush of the waves, feel the warmth of her body against his. Inside, the lamp flickered. The file sat open on the coffee table now, the map spread wide. The red dots glowed under the light, like embers waiting to burn. Thomas's eyes lingered on them as the wind rattled the windows. He knew what was coming. The war he thought he'd left overseas had followed him home, hidden in shadows, dressed in suits instead of uniforms. And though the porch light burned steady against the night, Thomas Reed understood something deep in his bones. The fight wasn't over. Not for him. Not for the men whose names filled that file. Not for the families who still waited for a knock on the door. The soldier had come home. But home, he realized, was just the beginning. Thomas Reed's story wasn't just saving his family. It was proof a soldier never truly leaves the battlefield. They carry duty, loyalty, and wounds no one sees. It shows us how faith and family can pull a man back from the edge. Behind loss, there's still light reunion, and the burden to protect the weak. For our generation, it's a reminder that courage isn't just war abroad, it's facing the dark right here at home. And above all, a house only becomes a home when it's lit by love, responsibility, and truth. If you think this story might reach somebody, share it with them. Maybe over a hot cup of coffee by the window at first light, or in the quiet of a late afternoon. Stories like this aren't meant to sit alone. And I'd like to know, are you watching this in the morning, or later in the day? Leave me a comment and tell me. And don't forget to subscribe, so we can keep walking together through the stories still waiting down the road.